This is ODAT Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey friend, thank you for joining me on another episode of the ODAT Chat podcast. Today, my two favorite co-hosts, Charlie and Jason from the Way Out podcast, are joining me to discuss a very specific and rampant form of online recovery group drama. We're calling this episode Judgment versus Honest Feedback. I'm not going to explain it all here since we go into it on the podcast, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject as well. Send your comments to arlena@odatchat.com or leave them on the ODAT Chat podcast Facebook page. For more episodes like this one, visit the website at odatchat.com. I'm also going to leave a link to the Zoom video. I actually have this all on video. So if you want to watch this, you can see that on the ODAT Chat YouTube channel. How fun is that? So let's see. One last resource I'd like to share with you before we jump into it is SoberLifeSchool.com. I have a class starting soon called The Connection Cure, which is all about developing self-care practices and building healthy relationships that all contribute to your sobriety. We do this as a group, which fosters a sense of belonging and accountability, gives you meaning and purpose, so you can experience a breakthrough and experience more joy and happiness. So for more information on dates and times, visit SoberLifeSchool.com. Well, so that's it. With that, please enjoy this episode with Charlie and Jason. All right, welcome to the ODAT Chat podcast. I'm with my two co-hosts today, Jason and Charlie from the Way Out podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
I'm so excited about this. So I had so much fun talking to you both on the podcast, and I was like, we have to find an excuse to hang out again. So I was like, hey, let's talk about how people are shaming the judgmental people on social media.
He wouldn't even tell me what it was. He just said it was going to be like a touchy one, a touchy topic.
Yeah, this is a little touchy, don't you think? Because there is a time and a place to be direct and honest with somebody. But so here's the deal. This is why I wanted to bring you guys on, because I know you're really involved in the online recovery community, and I first initially reached out to Charlie and I was like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I see people on these Facebook groups where somebody says something outrageous and then other people chime in and correct that person. And then there's all these hand slappers. There are these people, I call them hand slappers, because there's these people who come out and say, you people are so judgmental. Stop being so judgmental. And It's in a very shaming way. And I'm like, I'm always left feeling like, where is it appropriate to call someone out, right? And I know it's important on how to do it, but do you guys see that a lot as well?
Oh, a ton. And, it's interesting. And I think examples can bring this subject to greater clarity and bring some context around it. Jason and I both moderate a Facebook group called Sober and Serious. It's got a bunch of folks, right? And there's a ton of them, right, in the recovery community, in the online community at large, but specifically within the recovery community. And you'll see things like, "Hey, am I still sober if I smoke weed?" Right?
Oh my God, that kills me.
And then somebody will invariably be like, "No, you knucklehead, you're not, because weed's a drug." And then you'll get all the hand slappers out saying, hey, don't be mean. They're just asking a question. They have the right to ask that question, that kind of stuff, right? So you see that kind of stuff all of the time. And, as you said, Arlita, you've got, there's a section of folks that perhaps are waiting for an opportunity to tell somebody how mean they are for saying smoking weed makes you not sober, right? So
Right.
those kinds of situations occur all the time. Jason, you moderate the same group I do. Are there examples like that you see?
Oh, totally. It's just ridiculous sometimes too, because sometimes it turned into such a big blowout fight, and it's like over something that's like a hypothetical question,
right.
And like to the point where then next thing you know, there's a new post from one of the people that was involved, and they're like, bitch, 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 moan, moan, moan.
This group is bullshit.
And I'm out of here.
Right.
You call that the hair flip. I'm leaving.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
And then you got people dropping in the memes that are like, this isn't an airport. You don't have to announce your departure before you leave. Stupid shit like that. And it's, I get
it's kind of funny.
We all are jokers, and we have to be, right? Because you're not going to really sustain any kind of recovery if you take yourself or others too seriously. But at the same time, it's like, let's all just jump in, and like now it's like we're going to make fun of, like relentlessly, like make fun of. And it's usually a small group of like a few people that are either doing the picking, doing the defending, or doing the making fun of, which I think is straight up bullying. That's just another way of being mean. You know what I mean?
So as a moderator, what is your role? Do you shut it down? Like, do you stop allowing people to comment, or do you try to?
We can mute them for 24 hours. We can block them from the group. We can kick them out. We can do all that shit. Generally, before I do anything, I'll make a comment saying, what's expected, and remind them of the rules that they agreed to when they entered the group. Because
what are the group rules?
I don't know them by heart.
But is it like, don't call each other names?
Yeah, it's
that shit's
respect,
in there.
Right?
That's all in there. No bullying, nothing. Yeah. But I'll say a comment if I don't receive a response within a couple minutes, and especially if I see anything else happening, where like they're continuing on and trying to ignore that I fucking just said something, then I'll private message them, and 90% of the time they really change their tone pretty quick, because we got a shield next to our name, and
you have the power.
We are the law.
These are like, the power.
Please don't kick me out. I love this group.
Yeah, the group police. But there is legitimate questions that also are that may be fairly obvious to folks that have been in long-term recovery for some time.
Yeah.
And folks are asking that are new in recovery legitimate questions. Right? Yeah. And they may be misguided. They may be a whole myriad of things. Right. And you've got somebody that, throws a dose of honesty at them, whether they, and they may not want to hear it. Right. Things like, hey, I'm trying to get sober, but I also still really love all my friends that, bang heroin every night, and I'm not going to, and I don't want to leave them. So, can I be sober and sit in the same room with all my friends that bang heroin all night? Right. Yeah. And it's to them a legitimate question. Right.
Right.
Like, hey, I want to be sober, but I don't want to leave these people. And of course, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But, you got somebody that might come and say, hey, look, so-and-so, if you're really serious about this, you have to make a decision here. You have to do this, right? Or they'll give them some sort of, dose of reality, which is, we can't hang around our old drinking and using friends and expect to stay sober. And then the hand slappers come out, right? Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's cool. Or and it's not even necessarily always true, because really sometimes somebody can do that, but with a message of love behind it. And
it is
then,
how you say it.
And then you'll have a litany of other people who have strong recovery corroborating, backing it up, encouraging the person the same thing, maybe adding in a little bit more wisdom, encouraging the person that gave that great advice. I mean, every once in a while you see that kind of stuff too. So it's not always like it has a bad turn, but yeah, sometimes it's like, why did that person even bitch at him? That was some awesome advice,
Right.
Yeah.
It all comes down to motive to me.
Yeah.
All comes down to motive. What's the motive of the person posting? Are they trolling? Are they looking for somebody to co-sign on their bullshit?
Right.
Are they shopping for the right answer? And they'll keep, shopping until they get the answer they want. So it all goes down to motive for me from the original post. It goes down to motive for the people that respond. Why are you responding? Are you responding to help? Are you responding so that you can genuinely help this person and be of service? Or are you responding because you're, living in a defect of your own?
Dude,
right?
Exactly. Because the glasses we look at the world through, right? Like,
right. Absolutely.
They can be dirty. They can be bad. They can be cracked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for people with solid recovery to be able to share that, their wisdom, right, or their perspective in a gentle and loving way. But I do think it's important, like, the weed thing, Suboxone, those are heated, and it always goes to it quickly spirals downward, but it always goes to like, well, nicotine, caffeine,
sugar.
There's always that one one guy.
Totally.
Yeah. Or gal.
That's always one of the arguments in the debate. It's like,
totally.
oh, well, I know people with long-term sobriety who smoke like chimneys and they're not healthy. And it's like, wow, we've totally lost sight of what's important. And like when it comes to things like Suboxone and weed, no, you can't claim time. Do I feel like you should be able to, and then there's that thing about claiming time. Claiming time isn't really the goal, right? The goal is to try to stay sober one day at a time, progress, not perfection. Everyone's at a different place. And I do feel like maybe we place too much emphasis on how much time you have, because that's when, because I think there is a place for Suboxone. I don't know if there's a place for weed or not. I mean, I honestly don't know.
Harm reduction is a legitimate pathway.
Right.
In a harm reduction model, yes, there is. But in an abstinence model, no. Right?
Right.
It depends on the pathway that you're pursuing. If you're pursuing sobriety, then, weed's going to get in the way of that. Right? If you're trying to pursue harm reduction, then then that's a different story.
Yeah, and none of us are qualified.
Story of my life.
What's that?
Story of my life was me trying to pursue harm reduction without any help. Of course, just on my own. Shit didn't work out too good, so that's why I ended up here. And
no, honestly, I feel like drugs and alcohol saved my life to some extent in the beginning, because if I had to feel all the pain I was feeling because I had no solution, I don't know that I would have survived some of that pain I was experiencing. But the goal and the purpose is to transition off of those things if possible. And, if you are going to attend a 12-step program and try to abide by those rules, then we do kind of get a little bit uptight about Suboxone and weed and stuff. So I do feel like it's kind of funny when people are claiming clean time with doing those things, because that's not really clean, right?
Right. Like in a meeting, right? This is the only time that I find it funny, because like in a group on Facebook, it's most of them, some of them are AA or NA only, and they're fucking strict about that shit too. But like our group is not affiliated with any specific pathway.
Right.
So we support all pathways, and it says that shit in the entry thing. So it's like people should know that they have to respect all views, or at least try to. Well, obviously there's going to be arguments, but like, yeah, if you're in an AA meeting and somebody gets up there and gets a medallion, when it says right in the readings, that it's abstinent, or no, I guess I'm thinking of NA, where it says abstinence from all chemicals, including alcohol, because alcohol is a drug,
right?
And that it's one disease, and that way it's not confusing people into thinking one thing's less harmful than another.
Right.
Like, and then you get up and you get it. It's like, come on, dude, figure it out. Like, listen to the.
So what do you do in that case? Would you call somebody out on it?
Maybe after, in private.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it in front of people, and I'm not gonna be a dick about it.
For sure.
And I would definitely speak from my experience, and say, hey, look, I can't work your program for you. I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you that in my experience, abstinence was the key for me to be able to start to get well. That was the starting point, was abstinence. Anything outside of abstinence only led to further progression of my disease. So I had to start at a point of abstinence. And I find, if I speak from my experience, rather than using words like you and
don't say you.
Right. But if I say, I found what worked for me.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the only thing that ever works. But you look at March 6th, 2016 was the last time that my first time waking up and not like going right to a pipe or a needle or a bottle. And I jumped into this program. I still drank a beer, like a bedtime beer, until, right before my birthday, pretty much almost every day. But I was going to meetings once, two, sometimes three times every day. I was hanging with people. I was learning. I was doing the work. So I wanted it from the bottom of my heart. I had a reservation there, and I wasn't aware of that was twisted thinking, or that I was, putting up fronts in front of the room either. So I'm guilty of that in the beginning. So for me to look at somebody who's in the midst of that, where they're feeling like they're doing so much better because they haven't stuck a needle in their arm for 6 months, and they think that you're fucking an asshole because you're trying to tell them they shouldn't have got that 6-month key tag, because they go to the bar on the weekend sometimes or something. It's hard to, that's like you said, Charlie, I can only use my experience, and I can only come at it from a message of love. I can't come across like, pointing fingers,
or like I'm taking your inventory.
Right.
And we see a lot of that. And I catch myself taking other people's inventories, and I have to make a concerted effort not to. And I literally have to tell myself, Charlie, the only way that this thing works is if you stop taking other people's inventories and continue to take your own, and then, work with me, my higher power and my sponsor, and apply program to what I find when I take my inventory, right? But a lot of this stuff that happens in these online groups, even in meetings, those kinds of things, is a lot of folks taking other people's inventories. Yeah.
And I think people are really reacting when they see somebody else's character defect that they also possess.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the big trigger, right? It's like, you can't love or hate something about somebody else unless it's something you love or hate about yourself. And I think oftentimes we are in denial about our own character defects. And when I first got sober, I was listening to this. I want to tell you guys about my whole "if you spot it, you got it" theory.
Yes.
Is this a good time? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is so. I love talking about this because my sponsees hate it. And I don't know why I take so much joy in that, but it's one of those things, like the things I learned early on in recovery that I hated were the things that saved me the most. Right. And so there's this idea that, I've heard it in many different religions. Like, you can't like if you can't point a finger at somebody without having 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
If the pot calling the kettle black, I know, isn't that funny? It's like you point your finger, you got, yeah.
That's a good one.
The pot calling the kettle black.
Right.
And even biblical is like, you can't, to help someone take the splinter out of their eye when you have a log in your own eye.
Yep. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Yeah. And so, at the base of that, it's about being hypocritical. But the thing is that it's really rooted in shame and not loving your whole self. Like recovery is about recovering your whole self. Right? Like my sponsor, when we did the inventory, she said, we're going to identify some character defects. And I challenge you, that's the key to get me to do anything. I challenge you to love your unlovable parts. And I was like, love my unlovable parts. I mean, that was like throwing down the gauntlet. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. But,
oh yeah.
So, and I boiled it all down to, if you spot it, you got it. And the way you can use it as a tool for transformation is that I will tell my girls, they'll come to me and they'll be like, this lady at work is working my last nerve. She's controlling. She's trying to, she's condescending. She's bossing me around. She'll give me like a litany of character defects. And I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but you would not be able to identify those character defects if you did not possess them. And it's like, so take that list, and we have to set aside our pride and ego and shame. Those are the things that prevent us from seeing our character defects. It's like we feel shame about it, so we bury it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But so if you can go ahead and take someone's inventory, and I go, okay, give it to me again. What are the things that they'll say dishonest, controlling, condescending. I'm like, have you ever in your life been controlling, condescending? You know what I mean? It's like, can you think of times where you have been that way? Well, it's like, of course, yes, right?
Lots.
It's like, how do you want to be treated? It's like, first of all, why were you behaving that way? Well, it's basically out of fear, right? Fear that I'm not going to get what I want, or that I'm going to lose something that I already have. And it's like, well, when we're afraid, does condemnation help? Does it help to be hateful? No, obviously not. We only get past those things through love. So it's like, and we practice loving our unlovable parts by seeing it in somebody else, but then practicing patience and love and tolerance with them too.
Right.
By seeing past the character defects to the good parts, because I can tell you that everybody in my life that I love, they all have a dark side. Do I love them anyway? Yeah, it's because I am focusing on the good parts of them. I'm not focusing on the negativity or the character defects. So why can't I turn that same sort of perspective on the people who are challenging me the most? Because ultimately, they're the ones, those are my healers. Those are my teachers. If I can learn to be loving to the people who irritate me the most, I can then acknowledge my darkness and my own character defects and learn to love my whole self. So that's my sermon.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, Arlena. The one of the pieces about character defects is, I just read a reading about this, a sponsor talking to sponsee, going through 6 and 7. Sponsee says, hey, I'm working on my character defects. I'm working on them. And sponsor says, yeah, you've been working on them for 20 years. How about you let God take them?
Oh, yeah.
So this idea that, when I read 6 and 7, I initially read it as it filtered through my Charlie brain as Charlie works really hard to remove all of his character defects all by himself, right? And that's not how it reads.
Who else's job is it?
Right. Right? Awesome. Like, come on. So it's about being humble enough
Yeah.
and willing enough to know that I have them, and to know that the only way that these get removed is if I'm willing to have the God of my understanding remove them. And that's a process of love, and that's a process of acceptance. You talked about your sponsees and the conflicts at work and family, or even in family, but at
everywhere.
Work, everywhere. I found that the more my boss becomes an irritant, the more my kids become an irritant, the more people in my lives, drivers on the road, become irritants, right?
Yeah.
That actually has nothing to do with any of them.
Right. That's all outside stuff.
That's all. What's changing is me.
Yep.
I'm becoming restless, irritable, and discontent. I'm becoming less tolerant.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
And that is the deal. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels like everybody else is becoming more irritating. Right. But in reality, I'm becoming less tolerant.
But the difference is that today you can recognize, and because you've been taught that it's you. Right. So you can see it now. But before, and this is why, Arlena, you love to tell your sponsees that shit that they hate to hear, is because when you're starting out, we're operating under our old beliefs, thoughts, and attitudes that drive the ship. And we really, when it comes to our character defects, it's all buried under justification, rationalization, minimization. But so we really are blind to our shit, most of it. Maybe not all of it, but most. And when it comes to other people's shit, we were justified in our anger. We were, so we really couldn't let it go, and we never could see that it could maybe be possible to let it go. I mean, I should say me, because this is my experience. So for me, the answer to all of this, or what helped me really get going with it, was the principles of the program. But then once I was in recovery for like a year and a half, and I found Christ, and I started to come to faith, this right here is the principles, essentially. And it's the St. Francis prayer. I'm going to read it. It's, Lord,
love this prayer.
Go ahead.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. And where there's sadness, joy. O divine master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it, of course, shut off. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. So, like, I can't be forgiven unless I'm willing to forgive others.
No doubt about
it.
People aren't going to want to do shit for me unless I'm willing to give of myself and serve others, and it goes on and on. This works and applies to everything. And I'm finding, as I go on with this, and really, that's why I love that. That's the principles, the principles of the 12 steps are really, derived from the Bible,
They're derived from the Bible, but it's interesting.
But they packaged it in a clever way so people that don't believe in God, could apply them to their life. And you only do it if you get hope, right? Because I seen what happened to you, Arlena, and you fucking changed like right in front of my eyes. And now maybe it can happen to me. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it's interesting because even people of different faiths recognize those principles.
No doubt.
Right.
I think they're universal spiritual principles. I think, no doubt, the Oxford groups were the impetus for the 12-step program. However, these principles are universal spiritual principles that apply across faiths and wisdom traditions.
All of them. Like I got a buddy of mine who he really, well, actually he was just on the show, Tim Cameron.
Yeah.
He kind of like takes a little bit from all these different belief systems, you know, and hangs on to them. Like he believes in God, but he also finds it affects him in a good way, and he experiences spiritual experiences through these other modalities too. And I'm like, dude, I'm the same exact way. Like I can sit there and like do some smudging, and I feel like I'm getting cleansed from that. You know, I think that it all works. And really, we can only experience it when we clean our closet out, right? And we stop living with all this hate and all these secrets and all these icky shit.
One of the things, Jason, you were talking about the St. Francis prayer, and to me that really goes to some of the direct advice that I got when I read Drop the Rock.
I love that shit. You just read that the other week. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, and Drop the Rock is amazing. So anybody out there listening to this amazing podcast, I urge you to run, don't walk to your nearest recovery bookstore if they have one around you. If not, the Amazon.com. Drop the Rock.
Drop the Rock is so good.
Is fabulous. And one of the things I learned from Drop the Rock was to work on the opposite principle, right? Not to try to will the defect away,
right?
But to practice the opposite principle. If I'm having a problem with selfishness, then I need to work on being giving. If I'm having a problem with pride, then I need to work on being humble, right? Greed, those kinds of things. So that to me made a whole lot of sense, because for so long I tried to just like get rid of the bad stuff. No, it's not really about that. It's really about working toward adding the good, right?
Yeah, if you focus on the good, then
that's right.
The bad sort of takes care of itself. It's just switching your attention.
Yes.
You guys just or Charlie, I guess, you just reminded me of the other thing that I was going to say, because I was like, I had two solutions. One was essentially that St. Francis prayer, but I didn't know it, but it, I found it in the principles. But then the other thing was, after I was doing this stuff and I'm applying these things and I worked my steps and I really started to repair a lot of the damage, and I was healing a lot, but there was still these parts of me, right, that weren't really healing and that were still hard to carry, and that were just, part of me still. And then I know we talked about this on our show too. I think I find that only through the best way to gain self-esteem is through doing esteemable acts. So I have to keep on giving back, man. And I think the long time and consistency is and like staying committed to this lifestyle of service and trying to really have a heart for others is what's healing those parts of my heart and my spirit.
No doubt.
And
Absolutely.
No doubt. That service piece is so important because it allows me to be a continual sort of channel for my higher power and doing his will, right? And when I'm being of service, then the channel to my higher power is open, right? And when I'm not, or if I'm full of self-centered
fear.
Correct. And I'm only thinking about myself.
Right.
And it's all fear at its base, but it doesn't feel like that all the time. Right.
But what's really interesting? You guys talking about like all these, service and doing all these esteemable acts. I remember the first time I did an inventory where I finally could see how my self-esteem was just taking hit after hit after hit, right? And that, going through different modalities over the years in recovery, it is so clear to me that we all operate from the level of our self-esteem. There's this idea that water seeks its own level. So we tend to attract to us like relationships or job situations, even money things, situations based on what we feel we deserve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not lost on me that service is required, because what that does is build up your self-esteem. And I feel like a lot of the work I do with others is focused on building self-esteem, because that's where we operate from. Like when a woman comes to me and she's telling me how horrible her boyfriend is, you know what she's telling me? She's telling me what she feels she deserves.
That's right.
She's saying, this is how I feel I should be treated. That's not what she says. What she says is, he's an asshole. And I'm like,
yeah, but she also says my boyfriend, right?
Exactly.
And why would you be his girlfriend?
Yeah, this is. Yeah, I keep telling them the problem isn't that you keep meeting assholes. The problem is you keep giving them your phone number.
Oh, snap!
100% correct.
Damn, girl.
But isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's true.
But we are attracting people to us based on the level of what we feel we deserve. So all this work that we're like all the things that you guys are talking about the service, and that does build up our self-esteem. And then that helps us to operate from a better level. And that it's like we slowly level up, right? Till we can be loving to ourselves, and we set up this environment with a community. Like, it's not lost on me that AA or many different programs, right? Not just the 12 steps, but that we set up an environment that supports us, right? We don't hang out with people who are, what did you call it? Banging
heroin at night.
Banging heroin. It sounds funny when I say it. I wasn't always like a soccer mom.
It's all good, man.
Hey, you know what? My 15-year-old son asked me today at lunch why they call cocaine blow when you snort it. So yeah,
because you're sucking it. It's counterintuitive. You're sucking it in.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say
not blowing it anywhere.
Right.
When sometimes people do blow it and it goes off, and then people.
Then you lose friends.
Right. That's like, exactly.
You're not invited back to that party.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
That's how to not get invited back to a party again.
That's a party foul right there.
Correct. That is absolutely correct. Arlene, I have to ask you.
Okay.
Have you been in situations where sponsees are looking for you to co-sign on bad behavior, or looking for your permission to engage in behavior that would be counterproductive to the recovery? And if so, how do you respond to that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be, I'm trying to think of specifics, right? I think I'm all good with specifics. And I was trying to think of a certain scenario. So without naming names, of course, like what comes to mind to me is a woman that I sponsor who struggles with boundaries. Mm-hmm. She allows people in her life to take advantage of her financially.
Right.
And so that's what I would, and she wants to justify it. Well, he does this for me, he does that for me, so it all. But my thing is that you cannot give beyond your ability to give without resentment.
Right.
And I think there's a more concise way to say that. But if you're giving with the expectation that somebody will give back to you later, that's going to cause resentment, right? I think that's a bad idea. I just think it's a bad idea, and I just had Wendy Adamson on my podcast, and she taught me something I had never heard before, which was, if you're in a situation when it comes to setting boundaries, if you have a choice between feeling guilty for taking care of yourself or feeling resentful and then just doing like the caretaker, she goes, choose guilt. Take care of yourself first and choose guilt, because over time that guilt transforms into a feeling of, you recognize that that's the healthy thing to do, is to put yourself first.
And that if I'm not practicing good self-care,
right,
then I cannot care for others.
Right.
Exactly.
Right? So as much as it's really an integral part of my recovery to be of service.
Right.
And I am doing a lot of service work in a lot of different areas, not just podcast related. That's a big piece, but there's a lot of other areas where I am of service. And that notwithstanding, I am militant about self-care.
Right. We have like the whole point of recovery is to recover some balance. You know what I mean? It's like recover your whole self, learn to be loving and patient and tolerant with your own self, but balance too. Don't you feel like we could probably do a whole nother podcast on the paradoxes of AA, right? Or recovery.
Totally.
It's like to thine own self be true, but don't be a self-centered asshole.
And this idea that, we have to give in order to receive, right? If I'm full of myself, then how on earth am I going to let God in, right?
Right.
So that for me is that service piece. I'm on a regular basis giving of myself so that I can let God back in, right? Sort of that idea that, a lake needs an inlet and an outlet. Pretty simple. Otherwise it becomes a swamp, right?
I have never heard that metaphor. That's perfect.
Yep. So without an inlet and an outlet.
Charles is full of them. He's got them.
Is he? Wow.
He's got them for days.
I knew it was a good idea to hang out with you guys.
He busts out some shit that I've never heard a lot. And I'm like, nice, bro. Where'd you hear that? I swear, I think it's because he listens to a lot of speaker tapes. So he gets to hear these people from all over.
Is that true? Yeah.
Well, it's got to be because we got like a lot around here, but you kind of hear the same shit over and over.
It's all borrowed information, right? None of this is new.
Right, there is very little that comes out of my mouth that I haven't heard from someone else in one respect or another. There's no doubt about it.
Guilty. Yeah. It's all regurgitated to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love that one from Omar.
Oh my God, I love Omar.
Yeah, he's
oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. Okay, good. So I'm super glad to hear that you guys are so solution based, right? Like we started out talking about the hand slappers and when is it okay to correct somebody, but you guys are all about love and kindness, which is kind of really what it all boils down to, right?
Right. I guess
intent, right? It's all about your intent. What are your intentions?
Yeah, absolutely.
I never got to really chime in on the thing about, even though you only asked Arlena, I guess. But
You're not resentful, are you?
Looking for you to co-sign on.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Let's do this.
What you got?
Okay, so I've had, I don't even know how many people I've sponsored, but it's a lot. And
do you want a gold star?
No. They always, honestly,
look, I'm already fashioning a merit badge for him, Marlena. I'm on it.
Oh, okay.
They always dip out and it's like no matter how much time invested or how deep we dive, to me that's all connection, right? So I'm connecting. It took me a long time to learn how to have a healthy level of detachment so I don't get butt hurt or whatever when they disappear. But a lot of times that's exactly what ends up causing it, is a conversation like that starts up and they want to tell me this story and I just see, thanks to my new glasses I got from the program, all these red flags, right? And then I sit and I listen and I wait for him to finish and then I'm like, here's what I'm hearing, and
that's a great line, by the way. This is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty good at delivering the information in a non-threatening and non-judgmental-ish, sort of kind of judging them, but judging them out of love, not, but they know that they're it's fucked up. It's twisted thinking, right?
Yeah. It's here's another way to look at it. I ain't mad at you, but
I can deliver it good, right? And then conversation's over and it'll be very positive and it'll seem very promising. Sometimes I'll leave these conversations on a high almost, that was awesome, and
I know what's coming.
and then I never fucking hear from them again.
I have a theory about this.
Yeah.
What is it?
Whenever you have, okay, so check this out. Whenever you deliver bad news to somebody, if they take it well, be prepared because they're going to be pissed later.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I am way more relieved if somebody gets mad at me and then we can hash it out, because what they'll do is they'll go away and they'll think about what we talked about, and then we can come back in love. But if someone goes, oh, okay, thanks, Jason, thanks, they go away and they're like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
There's
honesty in the anger, right? That, there's
peace, right? And there's trust, because people won't get mad at you if they don't trust you enough to work through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they're just not ready to fucking do anything about it.
In those instances, Jason, they got an answer that they didn't want. They wanted you to co-sign on behavior and, say, you know what, it's okay to go do that really, really, really counterproductive behavior. Right. And I'll be here to enable more bad behaviors later. And we'll have this great sponsor relationship where you get to do a bunch of bad behaviors counterproductive to your recovery. And I'm going to pat you on the head.
And then everybody in the rooms is like, isn't that your sponsee?
Right.
Like, oh, that fucker's a hot mess.
Right.
No, really though, I look at that stuff and I think about, when I first came in the rooms and I heard about like, never underestimate the power of planting a seed. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And like, I've been able to actually reconnect with old sponsees who flew the coop, and then, running them down the road, and it's nothing but love. It's nothing but respect. They have a lot of stories about where, what they did because they weren't done experimenting with their life yet.
Do you find that they appreciate what you said? Like you planted a seed?
No, yeah. It's totally like they're thanking me,
right,
from the bottom of their heart. And then I'm just like, wow. Because I mean, especially in the beginning, man, I would have a pretty tough time sometimes with that when it would happen. And
I know it's so sad because you love these people and you just want them to have the best. Like you want to help them. It's like you get sober. It's like you want to save everybody from that same pain. It's like, oh my gosh, I found a solution and I want everyone to have it. But some people are just not ready. And
doesn't it help when you can think about that if you love someone and they go away, you can sit and be like focusing on your hurt, or you can remember that you love them. You still love them, right? Like the love is still there. The love still exists.
And that you loved them enough to be honest.
And you can love from a distance, right?
Exactly.
If they're right, it's okay to love from a distance and say, hey, look, that's happened to me in sponsor relationships, and not co-signing on bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, they engage in that behavior anyway. Like, I'm a guy that says, you really need to work on yourself for a good stretch. Relationships really, really early in recovery are typically not a great idea. Here's my experience. That kind of thing, right? And we're gonna do what we want to do, kind of lot, and I had to love that particular individual from a distance because he wasn't wanting to hear what I had, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
And I had to watch perhaps, and I had
when I couldn't. You watch it all the time.
Yeah.
But like when I was first starting out, I think that was my biggest stumbling block was the people, places, and things, right? Because I felt like I'd be a hypocrite and all this if I turned my back on my friends, like some of them my lifelong friends. And that's the thing. That's the thing that made it possible for me to let go of those relationships for a while.
What made it possible for you to let go? That it was okay till
you can love them. You can still love them, but you got to love them from a distance till you learn to love yourself. Somebody told me that, and it was like a punch in the gut, and it just hit me so hard. And it was like I think I processed that for a week before.
It takes some time to digest some of these ideas.
Yeah.
We have to let go of our old ideas. Yeah. But it takes some time to digest it sometimes. And I've delivered information, even with, and I think about the way I receive information too. I have a sponsor who is like an incredible safe space for me. So I go through my stuff faster in her presence. And she'll say things to me like, she'll be like, oh, you know what's coming up for me? And then she'll just be honest and share with me what comes up for her. And I have started to use that. There were times when I actually had a sponsor years ago who was on, I think it might have been Suboxone, but I didn't understand anything about it. And I knew something, like she and I would sit together in a room and do step work, and I knew something wasn't right. Like I felt it and I never voiced it. I was just like, well, this is her process and we'll do it. I just trust her to be honest with me. And I found out later that she had been using the whole time. And it was so interesting because I almost felt like it was almost like a lie by omission, that I didn't have the courage to be honest with her and be like, something doesn't feel right. What's going on? I just never said anything. I didn't want her to go away. Like I was, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't, right. I was afraid if I let her go that something bad would happen. But I've learned since then, it's just so important to be like, well, this is coming up for me. I don't know what this means for you, but I decided from then on that I was going to be like honest, but try to be honest without, like with compassion.
Yeah. You got to be true to yourself and you got to honor them. And, like you said,
brutal honesty is not a good thing, right? Honesty is, but brutal honesty where it's hurtful is not a good thing.
Honesty without compassion is cruelty.
Right.
Dude, totally digged.
I gotta tell you this story before we end, you guys. So
okay.
Talk about honesty and talking about me hearing something that I really didn't want to hear. I was working through the steps in my first year of recovery, and I was on step 8, and I was just sitting on it, right? Just sitting on step 8, right? And I'm going back to my home group, and it had been like 3 weeks in a row that I shared out, like, I'm still working on it,
It's just a list.
Right, and exactly what, not my sponsor, but sort of my pseudo-sponsor in my home group, literally in front of God and everybody in that group's like, dude, it's a list that's sitting on your 4th step.
Became willing.
Yeah, take the names off of your 4th step, put them on a list, and you're done. It should take 5 minutes, right?
But the working of that step is the becoming willing.
I know, but hold on, Jason. Hold on. Okay. We're not done.
All right. Sorry.
Easy, Tiger.
Easy. Back off.
Get me going, bro.
So, and that's the part I was stuck on, Jason, was the willingness part, but he motivated me to do it.
Right on.
Because he's like, dude, it's just a list. It should take you 5 minutes. And so I didn't want to go back next week and not have it done.
Right.
Because he called my ass out. And so, of course, I waited until the day of the meeting the next week.
And how long did it take you, Charles?
Well, it took 12 minutes, but there was a smoke break in there and a potty break.
Sweet.
So, yeah. And I was using really good penmanship. So, but 12 minutes. So I went back and I said, look, Tim.
Were you mad at him?
Yeah. It took 12 minutes, I'll have you know. Not 5.
Right.
And he laughed.
You were wrong.
Like, that's right. But through the process of writing down those names, I became willing. So the writing process brought the willingness. And I wouldn't have become willing if he didn't call me out. So it was an important part of my recovery.
Yeah.
The 8th step was the hardest step for me, dude.
Right.
And I had to do it with my sponsor because for some fucking reason, be it that it may only be a list, right? Like part of the way my sponsor wanted to work the 8th step was that we're gonna like come up with plan for these people, for these amends. Like we're gonna go over them a little bit and figure out what's the best way to make that amend, or should you make it at all, or
whatever. Good one.
So that's how we did my 8th step. oh my God, like, I don't know if a lot of people do that when they sponsor people, but for me, that was the hardest step, the hardest one.
Really? Wow.
The hardest step. It was like taking your fourth step, right? And then your fifth step, that conversation is hard.
Dude, it was hard for me too. It was absolutely hard for me because
then going deeper, diving into the stuff from the fifth step conversation.
Well, I knew what was coming next, which was I had to make those amends, and
balking.
Totally. So I was looking a step ahead, and having that willingness to make amends, and there was some doozies on there, man, that I had sworn for years that I would never, ever apologize. Never. Apologize to those people. So,
that should be our next podcast.
Yeah.
The never evers of recovery,
right? Yeah. Or not yet.
Oh, good.
No, like you were saying too, that it was those working through all them with him. He helped me figure out what to write, right?
Yeah.
And then that process, like you said, Charles, of writing it down, made it possible for me to to become willing. And then not only did my fear or whatever of those certain really hard amends became a compulsion, like you were
compelled.
I have to do it now. Like, I need to face this stuff. Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah, it became a motivation.
Weird. And like I was like pumped about it to be able
really
to
cool.
Like when I got to talk to my son, like I hadn't seen in 16 years. That was it was awkward, sure, but it wasn't hard. It was awesome. And he was really, sweet, considering I thought those kids would hate me forever because I ain't been around,
Yeah.
And I still haven't heard from his sister, my daughter, so I don't know, but hopefully, but I gotta no expectations, right? Like all I can do is one day at a time, live this life, be of service, and I keep in touch with him, and I'm pursuing that relationship with him, you know what I mean?
And that's it, man. Just like we, to bring this full circle, shall we bring this full circle?
Yeah, it looks like Jason as we go.
It's all about being of maximum service to the God of our understanding, right? On a daily basis. And if we do that in recovery groups, online, in person, in sponsee relationships, we're going to be in good shape.
Absolutely. Love that. That's a good wrap up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
You guys, he's done this before.
What's that? Oh, he's done it before.
I said it's like he's done this before.
I know. It's so good. Such a professional.
Except he's never done a video. I was talking to Charles asked him if he had a YouTube channel.
Do you have one?
I do not.
No. And I think it's a good idea, man.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm going to publish this on YouTube as well. So if you want to watch us talk all over each other.
I know, totally. Arlena, this was great.
Thank you so much, guys. I just love you guys. You guys are so amazing. I love how you're so into solution. And is that you blushing, Jason?
Yeah, kind of. I'm like really, it's a huge honor for me to be a part of this at all. Like to be on the way out with Charles is.
It's good stuff. You guys are doing great stuff.
It's a big blessing. Like I'm gonna cry now.
Just try to help some people, right?
So sweet. Yeah. Well, there's a guy.
Don't tell anybody.
What's that?
I said, don't tell anybody.
Okay. Don't tell anybody.
There's a guy. What?
I've had some work done on my house, and he's got a blower right outside my window. Can you hear that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Only a little. Only a little.
Maybe that's a sign from God that we should wrap it up.
I'm with you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.